Good morning, everyone. This is the Committee of the Whole workshop for March 11th, 9:03 a.m. Please turn your cell phones to the silence or off setting. Was the meeting properly advertised?
Mr. Chairman, this meeting was advertised on March 6, 2021 in the Pensacola News Journal and the board's weekly meeting schedule.
Perfect, thank you. Commissioner May, do you want to lead us in the pledge, please? Yes, sir. We'll do a quick commissioners forum. Commissioner Berry?
Nothing.
Commissioner May?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I had opportunity to talk with Paulette's family on yesterday, and we know that whether you in human resources or whether you in public works or economic development, it doesn't matter. You've probably crossed her at some point in your career if you've been at the county. So we just want to continue to keep her and her family in our prayers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, we do. Thank you. Commissioner Underhill?
Nothing for the good of the whole, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Prakash.
Yeah, I would just like to thank Eric Gilmore and Chief Paul Williams for taking time to meet with me yesterday, discuss some very important issues out in my district, and just appreciate their attentiveness to that. Also want to take a moment to thank Janice Gilley and Allison Rogers. We had a meeting yesterday afternoon. It went kind of long, and it was lots of really intricate issues, but I appreciate Allison Rogers following up and getting with me in the morning, first thing in the morning, with some answers to some questions. So I just really appreciate that, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect, thank you. I want to send our condolences to Frenzy Moore, the wife of City Council member Jared Moore, who lost her mom in that accident that was in Perdido on I think it was Sunday night. So I know she was I didn't really get to know her, but seeing the comments online on how bubbly and fun she was. So I know it's a huge loss for them, and wish everyone involved the best. Also, Commissioner Hunter, I think, do you have a cleanup this week? Is that, so anyway, so you have one this week. The residents of the North Davis area have one on March 17th. They'll be receiving a flyer in the mail, and so we're looking forward to getting those started, not immediately post a hurricane this spring. So we're doing a couple of those over the next few weeks. Board, we're going to move forward with the agenda as it's posted. There's
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes.
Those cleanups, one of the things that people often come to me and ask me about volunteer opportunities. I know that in my district we have a lot of seniors, so I don't know, with ours, I oftentimes push any volunteers to help those seniors, especially things like getting paint and tires out. I don't know if that's done in the other districts, but I mean, we've found it to be very productive for the seniors and those who don't have the ability to take care of it themselves.
Sure.
We're kind of getting at that end of the school year. A lot of students are being very focused on the volunteer efforts that they need to complete for their bright futures.
Haven't done that yet.
And so I just want to take that opportunity to put that out there. Those are great opportunities to do it and really have an immediate impact on some of our needy citizens. Thank you.
Sure, and I mean, I know how much the citizens really enjoy it, getting able to get rid of some stuff, especially as we get into some spring cleanups. So, Board, we are going to move forward with the agenda. It probably will not be for this first item. Amber's not here to present, and so we will, I think we've all been briefed on it. Yep. And so we'd be available for questions. You want to run through the presentation?
I think it's okay if we could run through the presentation, and then if there are questions by commissioners, we would be more than happy to take those. I think Amber would be okay with me sharing with you that she did just get a call from the hospital and her father is not expected to make it. And so it did just happen literally as she was going to get on the elevator to come down here this morning. And so I will tell you that it is a bit of a shock from just, I was with her 2 nights ago when her father called and spoke with her, and he seemed quite well. So I'll just share with you that that's been a bit of a shock this morning. But Melissa is here. Melissa is the one that has been working to reconcile with our departments the LOST3 projects that we've spoken with each of you about. So Laura, if your team could pull up the PowerPoint, that would be great.
Well, I'll just say, of course, our thoughts and prayers are with Amber and her family.
Yes, thank you. All right. So as you can see, we'll go to slide 2. There we go. So the goal for today is to close the LOST3 by fiscal year end 2022. Next slide. This shows you LOST3 and the amount of funds that have been expended for projects through fiscal year 2020. So you should all be very proud of the projects that you've accomplished and the work that has been done over the past, I would say 12 years at this point with LOST3. Next slide. This shows you just the LOST3 expenses by, I would say, departments, and then the encumbrances, and then as we've discussed with each of you, the project balances. Here are some of the completed projects throughout the community, and we have pictures of hundreds of projects if you're interested. Next. Here's the fund summary that we would, I think we've shared with each of you as well, where we are in terms of planned projects, and then the some of the internal loans, and then also external loans. Next. And then here were the action items that we just wanted to make sure we have, as we said, discussed these with each of you. If you have any questions, like I said, we'd be more than happy to take them, or we'd be more than happy to get with you again afterwards. Next. And then here's our strategy coming up. Our goal is to start providing you with monthly updates so that you can see where you are in your LOST projects, and then we would provide a update to the board in the backup in the financials each quarter, beginning third quarter of this year. And then we would also be discussing the LOST4 projects at the budget workshops for approval at the budget hearing, so that you'll have a really good idea of your projects and where they are for that fiscal year, because I know that's always a challenge, is keeping up with those projects throughout the year. And then, as we've mentioned to you, if a project is hopefully able to have a savings, we would put that into the district reserve so that you would not have to, as you know, look for what I call couch money whenever we try and find ways to fund your other projects that might be a little over budget, because that has been an issue, I think, since I've been here, maybe an issue ever since the beginning of LOST.
So today, that is our goal, is to close the fund by end of fiscal year. So I would entertain questions and be able to get you the answers that you are looking for.
So part of this is it's a streamlined process so that all the funds go into one bucket, if you want to call it, and that you don't have to have multiple project codes, and so it's easier for staff to reconcile projects. The project savings automatically go to a district reserve, and which we think is a good start. And just looking to close out LOST3 now that we're 2 years into LOST4. Board, go ahead, Commissioner Underhill.
Thank you very much. Could you go back to the previous slide? It's my understanding that these are the asks that you really need to make sure that you have all the 5 of us, know what our opinions are on these 4 items. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That's what you're hoping to get from today. So I'll just go ahead and get started. Projects not yet initiated, those get moved to project balances, LOST4. That makes perfectly good sense to me. I see no problem with that. That seems like the right thing to do. For number 2, projects initiated but not yet completed by FY 2021. Or 2022, I would prefer to see us close this out in 2021, but I recognize that this isn't the only thing on y'all's plate. And with all respect to Amber and the progress that she's made in the finance side of running this county, the 2022 seems perfectly acceptable. So item number 2, I have no issues with that. Upon completion of all LOST3 active projects, balance will be transferred to LOST4 district reserves. It's my understanding in my briefs earlier that this actually meant to say upon completion of each LOST 3
Yes,
active
sir.
project. As it's written on the slide, it means that none of that gets transferred until all of those projects are done, and I'm pretty sure that was not the intent of the slide.
Yes, I spoke to
Okay.
Amber this morning prior
Okay,
to.
so as long as that intent is for each of those projects, as we put them to bed, we transfer the remaining funds to district reserves, that makes perfectly good sense to me. Item number 4 is the one that really, I don't see how we really have much of an option on this. We've taken loans from LOST, those need to be paid back. And so reflecting the cash used as to where it actually came from and restoring the LOST fund appropriately is absolutely makes sense. I'm particularly concerned about the $10 million that we used for storm response in 2014 that has not been paid back to LOST. That's actually $10 million of LOST projects that should have been done by now, of money that we've taken out of the citizens' pocket in the form of a tax, and they were expecting projects. So yes, yes, and yes to paying back those loans and getting out of the debt to ourselves business. Now, obviously, those have been very useful. One of those a couple of those debts are for projects in my district. That's the way we've always done it before. I'm very optimistic about moving away from the way we've always done it, and I think that this is a great step. And then just to opine on the next slide, it is really cool to see our finance department really thinking about how they manage not just the finances, but the messaging of the finances in a strategic way. I think that's a huge step in the right direction, and my hat's off to all the staff who participated in that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Berry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm certainly sorry to hear why Amber's not with us this morning. We have had the opportunity the last couple of weeks to spend quite a bit of time together. And if you want to flip back to what you're looking for today. I want to thank Dawn Trosh and Dylan and Robin Lambert. They spent a lot of time the last 2 weeks working to reconcile what's being proposed as project balances and project balances and what would be carried forward, those kind of things, to kind of audit those against the previous, the previous spreadsheets that we have, going back into December and then, even into previous years to just make sure that we're all on the same page with that. To understand that all of that is good, and I want to thank them for that work the last couple of weeks. It has been a lot. And Amber and I have had a couple of conversations about the loans issue. And without her here, we've got to ratify whatever we discuss from today anyway. So I just as soon I'll spend some more time with her the next couple of weeks before we meet again and talk about what I see as far as addressing the loans. She had some ideas that I actually agreed with, and I don't know that her ideas from our meeting is exactly what's in this spreadsheet. So I'm just going to kind of withhold my comments about the loans issue until Amber's here. And like I said, I'll spend some more time with her, privately before the next board meeting when we would ratify anything from today. But the larger portion of today is reflected is going to be encompassed in the balances and the project-specific issues, which I am good with everything going forward today. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would just say I think at least all three of us agree on the first three. I like the idea that right now that it's moving in district reserve, so it's staying in your district. Regarding the loans, I think it's more of it. Some of it's just some maybe some journal entries and things like that need to be done. But I'd look forward to having those discussions and seeing what the next few weeks hold. And so that's really all I got to say about that right now.
All right, and I would just like to thank Melissa.
Yes.
I will just share with you that Melissa, I don't know, 3 months, 2 or 3 months you've spent trying to go through, get project codes, reconcile with the departments. The departments have been extremely helpful, but I just want to thank you because I know how many hours you have spent trying your best to reconcile all these, people make they put project balances in a line item, and then 8 years later, it may not be the exact same cost. And so you were dealing with a lot of different pre and post and even currently initiated projects to try and reconcile these documents. And so I just appreciate all the effort that you've put forward. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you liked doing that for us.
It was really a department-wide effort. Our directors are great, and their staff is wonderful as well.
Yeah,
So-
so, right, this was, I guess, our first big project she had.
It
she
was.
given,
Melissa
and it
came to
was-
us, from the school
School board,
district, and she
yep.
had not seen anything quite like this, so it was a big challenge. And so I appreciate all her effort and absolutely being willing to dive in and do something this
And that's everything
difficult.
from looking at board recommendations to going back and reviewing minutes to seeing what was actually done and everything like that. So appreciate all your hard work on this and really glad that we get to hopefully close out LOST 3 and consolidate and make it easier for everybody to continue working. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, board, we have the, item 2 is the LOF 8 master plan update. Is Terry giving the presentation, or are we just? Yep, okay.
Do you have any opening comments, or you just want to? Yeah, the hybrid? Okay. So this is where we left off. We left off with you, the hybrid plan.
Yeah, basically, we left off with the hybrid, and I just want to say, since the last meeting to this meeting, we did have that town hall meeting where we had like 200 participants, when that gave us an opportunity to show the stakeholders the hybrid plan, how that came about, and that kind of thing. So we still are getting comments in on surveys, information in, but we have presented it to the stakeholders. So that's really all that we have to present.
Can you, I'm sorry,
Yep, go ahead.
can you contextualize what the comments have been and what the support was? I mean, really, I understand the
I've
data's
got-
still coming in, so.
We still have some coming in right now. We had the meeting, we had 228 participants. We had some unregistered on Zoom, and then we had 25 Facebook, which to me is a pretty good number. I had another public meeting just Tuesday, and I had 19, so to put it in perspective, that to me was pretty good. The length of the meeting, I don't know how many people were able to join from the board, was about 3 hours. So we had a lot of questions on that. And I do have some stats that I can get if you want to go through that, or we can wait until we roll them up and then I can send them in. It's up to you. They're preliminary at this point.
Okay, if you don't think the stats that you have tell an accurate story, then it'd probably be best to wait for them and get the full roll-up. So
Okay.
I'm not in any hurry either way.
Okay, yeah, I'd rather wait until we have the full roll-up than to give you something and then it changes later.
I respect that, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Terry, for bringing this in. And again, I want to reiterate my thanks to you, Commissioner Bender, for taking the initiative to meet with some important stakeholders on this project and to really move forward with something that is really a lot closer to what I believe the original intent was for this property, which is to create jobs. Obviously, I liked this a lot better than any of the previous 4 plans. In going through some emails and text messages that I've seen, it seems there was some undue deference paid to certain individuals, certain groups, and frankly, not enough attention paid to the rest of the county who's going to be funding this. So I do think this is closer. I've got some significant issues, but one of the things I want to talk about today, and we don't get a chance to talk as a group, I've lived out in Beulah for many, many years, and one of the things I have seen firsthand is that when explosive growth happens and there's not the infrastructure to support it, you have big problems with traffic issues, you've got schools overcrowded, things of this nature. And one of the things that I always hear from constituents is, why do you let them build it before you have the money for the infrastructure? Why do you let them build subdivisions, apartments, businesses before you've got a plan for how you're going to pay for the infrastructure? I've also had a lot of people ask and I've seen it on the internet, impact fees, we want impact fees. And so I want to discuss that. This is an unusual opportunity for us to really get it right. I mean, it's tabula rasa. It's an empty parcel of land that we own. And there's a tremendous amount of pressure on us to market it to folks who will very, very quickly build apartments on that. Beulah Elementary School, right around the corner, where all three of my kids went, remains overcrowded. I think they have 16 portable buildings, an 8-pack of modulars. They had to build a second cafeteria. The challenges go on, and I'm very familiar with that as a 10-year member of the school board. So I'm concerned about the density that I've seen discussed in these emails. I'm concerned about the density that I'm looking at right here, of what people want to build out there. I've never been a fan of the housing being built on this field. It's not why we got the field. I understand compromise. I understand that will probably be something that I have to compromise on. But with that stated, again, I get back to the important thing. People have told me, and it's part of the reason why I ran in 2015 for this position, to get infrastructure right before we let the building happen. When I was on the school board, I strongly supported concurrency. We signed off on it, and we voted on it. In 2011, concurrency went away at the state level as a means of trying to pull the state out of the recession that was lingering, and it went to the land development code of the county at that time. In 2013, the county at that time dropped concurrency as a requirement in the land development code. 2 years later, in 2015, there was a massive upzoning of a lot of property throughout the county, and property that was at one point zoned for 2 or 3 houses per acre suddenly got upzoned, and that happened in Beulah, and of course I lived there and watched it. So here we focus in on where we're at now, Robert. We've got an opportunity, we've got a parcel, and in speaking with the attorney at length over the last week, last night, this morning, there are methods, there are mechanisms we can employ here, depending upon what we want to build, so that we can collect the money up front for the infrastructure. And we can limit it to this geographic parcel. I'm not interested yet in moving it countywide. We're going to have that discussion in April, as I said. I'm going to bring concurrency, a discussion of it. It won't be popular. But in this instance, because we are the owners of this parcel, we're in the catbird seat. People want to buy it from us. We can stipulate, because the elementary schools are overcrowded, the roads are taxed, we need some upgrades, and frankly, if we're going to do what we're going to do with this parcel, and I see that the writing on the wall, I'm less and less convinced that we'll get that Triumph Gulf Coast grant. I'm less and less convinced, and that would have been a mechanism to do some of the infrastructure, the roads, the gutters, the stormwater. As that goes away, we've got to fund a different mechanism to do it. So that's the discussion I want to have today. Is there an appetite among this board of at least putting in some sort of mechanism where when these developers go in, because they will quickly go in there within a year, you give them this land with the right future land use category, they will go in there and they will quickly build apartment complexes. Housing's red hot. That will jam up our streets, that will jam up our schools. If we're going to do it, we ought to collect up front, and we ought to find a funding mechanism, perhaps a TIF for that area. There's other different things we could do to pay for the things that people want out there. The fountains, the clock tower, the parks, the curbs, the gutters, the streets, the schools, and all the other impacts. Beyond that, I'm looking to compromise. Let's get this thing over the line. I'm not happy with some of the things that happened, as I'm sure you guys are aware, some of the things I've seen in the media. And I feel like we've been undermined a little bit in this process by our consultants, and I've found evidence of that. Setting that aside, the goal for me now is to get this over the line. Let's get this over the line. Let's get a compromise we can work on. Hopefully we can assess some impact fees before we let them build a bunch of residential here, so that the schools can get money that they need, so that we can get money that we need to build the clock tower, the cobblestone streets, the fountain, the parks, the soccer fields, everything else, the agri-hood. Those things are nice, but they have to be paid for. If the Triumph Gulf Coast grant goes out the window, which it's starting to look like it will, we've got to find a mechanism to fund the things that folks want out there. And I'm not opposed to amenities out there. I've said that from day one. I would love more restaurants. I would love a post office. I would love the sorts of things, shops. But my number one goal has always been jobs on that field, because that's the reason why we spent the money to get it. So that's what I would like to kick off the comments with. I'd like to hear from my counterparts. If there's no appetite for collecting fees to help with these impacts of this growth, it'd be good to know that, because then I will stop taxing Allison with the research that I've got her doing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Bergosh. Commissioner Berry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff, I'm open-minded to that discussion. you know, and I have talked to Allison about it some as well, and just like you said, I mean, it sounds as if there's a, you know, a multitude of mechanisms to specifically do whatever it is we want to do related to that on that property. But the comments about the Triumph issue. So I've also had some conversations, and, you know, while the original figure that we had discussed, you know, a number of years ago, while I may share your sentiment about that, I still think that there's a very, very feasible opportunity for a Triumph grant on the property.
I hope so, I want to.
So it may be more along the lines of the $10-12 million grant rather than you know, the very large figure that we had discussed shooting for, you know, a few years ago. But and I did get some confirmation through some conversations with DOT about your you know, about the 9 Mile Road project and sewer, you know, which has not existed in the area, sewer being run along 9 Mile Road as part of the project. Mm-hmm. So you know, and if we're looking at a gross figure of, you know, $10 or $12 million, we already obviously show a tremendous investment in the property that would be towards the local match portion of it. You know, $10 or $12 million is not 30, but when it comes to, you know, now having sewer at least along 9 Mile to be able to tie into with the stormwater needs that will be on the property, if we could take a decent sized chunk of the stormwater and sewer issues out of the future development with some of that Triumph dollars, I think because those, in my opinion, those type expenditures on the property, if that's what we're doing with Triumph money, they have very broad and flexible future value to us and to the tenant and to whoever is out there, whatever activities are out there. They wouldn't be, you know, we wouldn't be putting this in, you know, even if we approve some, you know, this or something like this, you know, it's going to show a grid. And, you know, I think all of us have come to the agreement that we won't end up with a grid on the ground. We're not going to put roads in before things happen. I think that we've all, you know, have, you know, somewhat learned our lesson as far as that, you know, compartmentalizing this grid to make someone's project fit into what we've put on the ground. But I do think very reasonably we could burn through $10 or $12 million towards stormwater and sewer on the property, and just make sure it's, you know, make sure that the stormwater areas are going to be pretty easy to identify, apparently, based on some conversations with engineering type folks. So we can do stormwater work that's going to be non-binding to whatever tries to go on the property, and we can make sure that sewer is available throughout the property, which again wouldn't be binding on what happens there. We would just be making sure that it's available. And if we can make sewer, you know, if we can address the sewer issue, excuse me, and address stormwater issues, then we're also allowing for us to realize the greatest equity out of the, you know, out of each acre there, because then they're not the developers or whoever is doing work on the property is not having to devote portions of those lots to that type of infrastructure if we can address it in the more public areas. So I hope that we are moving forward with the Triumph application, at least based on some conversations I've had with Janice and Chips. I hope we're doing that. And, you know, and I think that it's a large parcel. I don't know exactly, you know, I don't develop, but my understanding is sewer and stormwater issues are very expensive. 10 or 12 million will be a good chunk towards it. I don't know that that even does everything on the property related to that, but it would be it would be something that would have value no matter who the end users are. And I think that if we can get our stuff moving forward with Triumph there, I think in that request ballpark financially, with the money we have in the property, I think that will be seen in a positive light based on conversations I've had.
And I appreciate those comments, Steve, and I will say this. I asked Chips and Matt to retool the original grant. I asked them months and months ago, so I think they've been kind of waiting to see kind of where this was going to land what they'd have to work with, what the parameters would be. So, I don't, I'm not up here saying we're not going to get it. I want us to. I hope we do. I like where you're going in terms of the infrastructure, because that was always something that was very appealing about the original project, the $29 million one. It would take care of a lot of those issues so that we could, a prospective tenant could come in and not have to worry about that. I'm full steam ahead with wanting to do that as well. I'm sure
Jeff,
Chip.
what made you think that we were not in a good position for the tram grant? Because, that's kind of been the initial thought for the job creation, was the tram grant.
Well, obviously they have not funded not one residential project, not one. They don't fund them. They don't fund residential projects. And so when this became something that was going to be mixed use, soccer fields, things of this nature, that really diminished the amount of acreage available to do a commerce park. But again, hearing what Stephen said, and of course my conversations with Chips and Matt, there could be a scaled down version. But again, it's all up in the air because we don't know where this is going to land. That's why these conversations are so important. And again, my hat's off to Robert. I feel like he came in at the right time to really put some things back on track. But the conversations now that I think we got to have is this what we're all settling with? Obviously, 271 acres is better than 84 or 90, whatever they were pitching before. I'd like to see it over 300. I'd like to see it specifically at 319. Why 319? Because that would at least be half of what this parcel, the size was. And again, the intention from day one, for decades, was to use the entire parcel to create jobs. So we've given and we've bent and we've compromised and we've given. So I'd like to see that 270 acre number go to 319. I'm not going to die on a hill for it. I'll take what I can get. Right. And I think at this point, with Robert's work with Louis Bear and some of the other stakeholders, getting to 271 is a good start. I'd also like to talk about the school. I met with Superintendent Tim Smith and Board Member Adams. They're going to need a K-8 school. We've got to be very, very deliberative in where we put it. Dumping it down here near the wetlands, I don't know that that's the best idea. I think perhaps up on the northwest corner, somewhere in this Flex 2 might be the ideal location. The other thing too is if you want 60 units per acre, high density, because you want a walkable, you want the idea is that they will walk to where they work, then why are we putting this where it is? Why not up in the northwest corner so they can walk right to Navy Federal or walk into one of the commerce areas? And down there in PHS MU1, I'd like to see that commercial primarily, and I think that's the intent from what I'm seeing here. But what I wouldn't want to see is gigantic 4-story apartment buildings right on the frontage of 9 Mile Road. I think that would be devastating. I'd like to see that's where the shops, the retail, the restaurants, things of that nature, and that's where we can recoup our money if we're intelligent in the way we zone it, and more importantly, the way we add the future land use. You see the dark brown buildings.
Yeah, and Jeff Kindley, what you're saying, just hypothetically, the apartment complex you're describing, a 4-story apartment complex, they're not going to pay us any premium to be in the brown versus the orange versus the blue. There's no, they're just, and I believe we all have conversations with developers. There's no market advantage to that. They're not going to pay a premium to be within sight of 9 Mile. It doesn't make any difference.
So why would we put it where it is? Those are the issues that I have. We need the acres, we need the numbers, then we need the rationalization for why we want to put that in the prime location where we could put, a TGI Fridays, a Chili's, or, some of these other amenities that the community wants, that I want.
And Jeff, that's important. If you're looking, for dialogue from your colleagues, as you said, unfortunately, we can't talk until we're out here. You'll find consensus, and I've been supportive, and I appreciate you, as well as Robert, and as well as our development team. And I think everybody's had to make some compromise. Like you, Stephen, I don't think anyone's followed this more than Stephen and I. It was talked about well before we were ever elected, and I concur with you that it was a job creation. I understand things are fluid, and you have to make adjustments. I certainly, support schools, but I do want this property to have as much Avalon producing as we can. If we start putting just public firehouses, schools with no taxes, that's going to be tough. Schools never give up their E-dates or their Avalon. We oftentimes give ours up. The school district has never given it up. So if you're looking for consensus and the work that DBZ has done on this hybrid plan, Jeff, you're not going to have me as an adversary. You know, I do question, you know, a couple things in terms of, and maybe you can help me with this, or I see Scott Luther or some DZ, or when they say that we already have shovel-ready sites that are ready to go, I would want to know, at least look at the study they have, where are those sites located right now? And if we already have those, why aren't we already putting commerce there right now, if that's actually the case? And so that's just one of those lingering questions that, like, for me today, I'd like to get that. Obviously, I'd like to get that answer from our consultant, or, you know, maybe a little dialogue with Scott, because from what I've read, that there was a study that showed that we did have sites that were shovel-ready to go. I think we need to clear that up, because if we do have those sites already, that certainly changes one's position if we have shovel-ready sites that are available for light industry and job creation.
And Lumen, can I just weigh in real quick on something Lumen said? You mentioned the fire service. We're building less than about three-quarters of a mile from this field. We're building a brand-new fire station, spending $4 million on it. Right now, it's a volunteer station, you know, and obviously with all this growth, again, I get back to doing infrastructure the right way, doing growth the right way. You know, there's going to be a need for additional fire service in Beulah. There's just no question, particularly if we allow this high-density, high-impact residential, which it appears we are going to do to recoup some of the money that we've invested. Again, over my objection, but in the spirit of compromise, it just appears that it will happen. That's why, Stephen, to your point, you know, if we can find a way to do it up front with some sort of an impact fee, some sort of additional, you know, method to collect revenue before we allow the development, then that would help subsidize Station 2 and perhaps even provide a daytime crew, daytime coverage, similar, not dissimilar to what you have at Century. You know, we have a difficult time with volunteers working during the day. And I see that need coming sooner rather than later. Whatever we do here is going to push that need over the top. And of course, I won't support raising the MSBU countywide. I've said that, I've stated it, I've campaigned on it. There's enough revenue there. We just have to be intelligent the way we budget it. We have to be intelligent, we have to be smart. But again, we're back to this opportunity. We can collect an MSBU for fire over and above what we collect in the rest of the county, just like we do at the beach areas, based upon needs. So there's things we can do, but I wanted to say that because you had mentioned fire service, Lumen.
Yeah.
Jeff, I'm sorry, Robert, one more thing.
Thank you, Jeff.
So what do you think, and ideally, you know, ideally we come out of the discussion today with some, you know, with some direction. What do you think about the idea, or what's your conversations have you had about trying to expedite wrapping this process up and just having the county move forward from there?
Well, from my perspective, that's kind of exactly where I want. I mean, we've got the input, we've got the engagement, we've got a good workable start right here. I would like to finish it up as soon as possible. You know, ideally, it would be great if Navy Federal Credit Union will endorse what we come up with, our final plan. Again, I'll reiterate, we have an MOU with them that's very specific. If they don't like it, they don't have to make the final payment. We're 4 phases. Janice, did we get that second payment from them yet? Where are we at with Navy Federal?
Unless it came in yesterday afternoon, we
We
have
haven't
not
got it
gotten it.
yet.
But we are aware that it is in process. We've been notified that it
The
was.
checks in the mail?
Yes, sir. I was trying to avoid saying the checks in the mail.
I like to say that.
But we have been avoided, we have, but the good news is this, when the MOU was written, it said there were 4 phases, and that was previous to the contract, so I believe our contract is 3 phases. And so we would be able to recoup cost of the 3rd phase up to 100% if you move forward today, allowing us to work with you all and try and figure out which of these areas you all which direction you would like to go with these different flex areas, you know, the different designations, and then they would be able to help us with the final phase, which would get us to 100% of payment.
Yeah, and that'd be great, but again, I think the plan has to come first over a final payment of, you know, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of money.
What kind of timeline is that being discussed? And I mean, whatever we do, we're going to have, I mean, as long as we own the property, and I mean, there's 2 aspects. As long as we own the property and control the uses, then our board is going to retain the ability to, no matter what happens and no matter what plan we give a thumbs up to going forward, what happens on the property is never going to be that. regardless. It's just not, I mean, so we're always going to retain the ability to, whether it's identified as flex now or not, we're still going to have control. As long as we own the property, as long as we control the land use in the area,
Yes.
we're going to retain control. So what kind of timeline is that, what you're talking about doing, what kind of timeline does that put a bow on this process and just be able to move forward from here with just us?
May.
Well, Stephen,
Yeah, I mean, I've got it pulled up from the February meeting.
I'm not sure I'm keen on that timeline. I was hoping maybe we'd have an expedited timeline to be able to just, to be
Bring it
able
in for a
to.
landing.
Yes, bring it in for a landing, let's move forward, and the county just move forward with what we're going to do.
yeah,
I
I
don't-
like that plan, Steve.
I
like it a lot.
don't know that I'm keen on another 3 or 4 months of this.
Yeah, me too, man. Well, look.
I agree. I mean, I think it would still have to go in front of the planning board and it still has to come back in front of us.
But it doesn't have to,
Twice.
but that can happen, can that not happen independently?
It can definitely be expedited.
Well, I'm saying, I mean, does it have to happen while all of this, while this engagement goes on as well? I mean, I'd like to try to expedite and
I don't, no, I think it can. I think we can, even before we talk about what Jeff wants to talk about, in terms of fees or whatever, I think that process can be started before then. I do want to, real quick, Jeff, talk about a few things. So one of the reasons why I asked Scott Luth to be there, and I know he ends up working for the board of the Florida West and PEDC, and that was why Mr. Bear was there, was that they felt comfortable that the 271 was enough. I understand you're saying you'd like to get to 316, but they felt comfortable with having enough out of that, and that's why I had them there. Navy Federal did express that it was, they were agreeable to where we were headed with this plan, that it did have what they were looking for. In terms of the Brown area, this mixed-use center, I don't see why you couldn't have a TGI Fridays or restaurants and things like that on the bottom floors.
But what's the future land use going to be? Because if we make it commercial and we have an HDMU future land use, they're going to pack it with apartments. I saw it on Pine Forest. I mean, I don't think anyone on this board wants apartments on the prime, most expensive, most valuable frontage on 9 Mile Road. I certainly don't, and I can't support it. So, Steve, that's to your point, where we've got to be very, very deft on when we apply these land use designations and codes. You know, as it stands, if we left it brown like that, and it's a commercial with a commercial designation, they could still build up to am I correct, Terry? 1/3 of that could still be lofts and apartments over retail. Is that correct? Up to 1/3 of it?
Well,
John's here. John
planning
is-
and land development is not really my area of
Oh, okay.
expertise, but
Horace, well, let's get the answer on that, because I think, Stephen, you're absolutely right. Let's bring this in for a landing. I think we're kind of to a point where I think we're talking, we're getting to where the numbers are getting good. And like I said, Robert, 271 acres, if our economic development people, PEDC and Scott Luth say that's enough, if they're saying that, then I'm not going to die on a hill trying to get 319. I'll take what I can get. Horace, on that front, the frontage that we're looking at, the dark brown, if that's commercial designated for like restaurants and shops, things of that nature, could they not also, depending upon the future land use, build high-density apartments in there? So what would the future land use have to be to prevent that?
Okay, if the future land use category.
You got to speak in the mic or else it won't pick up.
Thank you. If the future land use category is designated approved by this board with the planning board and by Tallahassee, if it has a future land use category of commercial, it says, for which more than 2/3 of the development parcel area and more than 2/3 of all the gross floor area within the parcel is devoted to commercial use.
Yes, that's, okay, that's something I think we could work with.
Yes, sir.
But now if the future land use is HDMU,
Now, the HDMU would be the zoning. But
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. If you had a future land use category of mixed use urban.
mixed use urban.
There is no limitation on it at all.
So we can't have that, Stephen, or else we're going to have gigantic apartment buildings right in the front. That's my perspective.
And Commissioner, I agree with you, and I think this is where we're thinking that you do have the retails and the shops, and that's why they say residential over retail, office over retail. But I think that's also where DPZ's involvement moving forward will assist you.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, if they're rewriting the whole code for Orlando, I think that's where you can work with them, and put in there, make it what you want it to be.
Well, here, may I just say one thing? I want to work with DPZ. And I came into the process after November of 2018, after we did our compromise, with an open mind and wanting to. But frankly, Robert, I don't know that you've read the emails and texts. I'm about 3/4 through all of them, and I don't feel like they're necessarily wanting to work with us. They've said some things, they've done some things. Even the latest text messages, they're saying that they don't feel like we're their client. They feel like everyone's their client, every citizen, which is preposterous, which is ridiculous. We have a contract with them. We're paying the invoices, right, Janice? When they send us an invoice, this board's paying the invoice, not Joe Citizen. Now, God bless, I get what they're trying to say. Of course, we represent the citizens, but this is a representative democracy. It's not a pure democracy. That means we get voted in and we make the decisions. We make the decisions, and DPZ should show some deference to us and not work with folks working to embarrass us, not work with folks that live in my neighborhood trying to undermine me. Yeah, that's what's happening. So I want to work with them.
Sure.
But they got to understand, and I want to hear it from them. We're the client, work with us. We've taken the input from the citizens. This board's about to decide on how to do this. They want to work with us. I think they should work with us and stop undermining us. But I do want to work with them.
Yeah.
If they're
May I
capable of
think-
doing that.
Sorry.
And
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, the Orlando issue, I'm not necessarily familiar with the Orlando issue, but I do have some familiarity with an Orlando issue from 12 or 13 years ago. We paid MSCW, which is now VHB, something to do a plan, and it was, in my opinion, and into many people's interpretation, a cut and paste plan from Orange County or Orlando at the time. I'm not asking anybody from staff to agree with that. That's not their decision who the board hires. But at that time, we paid a lot of money for a firm to do what, to a layperson, looks like a cut and paste plan from that had been done in Orlando previously.
So,
Orange
Stephen,
County.
are you of the opinion that we could take it from there and do that part of it in-house organically?
And I know that there may be some concerns on the staffing side or the staffing issue. I feel like the board and, boards change over a number of years. And, I can't speak to what this board was like to work with, more than 15 years ago. But at least for the 8 years that Lumen and I have been here and a number of us now working together for more than 5 years, we're comfortable making decisions, whether we agree amongst ourselves and whether the public always agrees with what we do. We're comfortable making decisions. This is a big deal.
Yes, it is.
Regardless of what comes from planning board or comes from, or comes from a consultant, there's a degree of legacy for all of us, especially a few of us, but for all of us, certainly, that's going to be associated with this project, with this property. And given that, I'm comfortable that we're going to end up making the decisions. So,
I agree.
yeah, I mean, what I'd like to try to do is put a bow on what's been done. We're much closer to what I can hypothetically support. Try to get out on a high note or a better note, and just kind of come to terms to maybe wrap the relationship up in the next month, and have things move forward with our staff. Again, regardless of what other bodies or agencies or consultants say, I think each of us are comfortable, and even as I disagree with my colleague from the southwest part of the county, often, he's very comfortable stating what he's going to support and what he's not going to support. It's not, he doesn't need somebody, I'm not going to speak for you, Doug, as I've given you a hard time about speaking for me, but you don't need somebody to tell you what to do. You're going to speak for yourself and do what you're going to do. And I think each of us is going to do that. So I think, even though there may be some concerns from the administrator about trying to have us manage it in-house, if we can get to a certain point here and just agree to move forward on our own, the board's going to lead what happens with this.
Absolutely.
Because we have to. It is such a huge investment. I mean, 5 years ago, not to be dramatic or anything, we were struggling extremely with trying to get this project just completed. We were, by all accounts, upside down $6, $7, $8 million on the property in Santa Rosa County. If the project hadn't come to completion, and if the swap hadn't come to completion, and we had to liquidate the Santa Rosa County property for just whatever cash we could get out of it, we were upside down in an unrealized position at the time because it worked out, but we would have lost a lot of money at that time. It would not
That's a
have,
fact.
it would have been a very, very bad thing. That would have been at least a couple of ours' legacy. We would have been the people that had a boondoggle in Santa Rosa County. That's not how it's worked out financially for the public. Everything is going to work out financially. We're not going to be the people that can be blamed for, for some folly in Santa Rosa County. That being said, that means it's got a huge part of a stamp of what our public service is going to be like. So I'm comfortable. We're going to end up having to make these decisions no matter what anybody recommends to us.
Yeah.
So let's try to end on as high a note as we can with the current situation and just kind of put a bow on it and move on.
Yeah, and Stephen, your district and my district are going to be the most impacted by this. I totally agree with you. I don't know contractually how we make it happen in a month, but if we could do it within 2 months, would that satisfy? Give Terry a chance to, because I agree 100%. If we get consensus, this is kind of where we want to be and that we're all able to support it, then absolutely, I don't need anyone else drawing pictures and doing any more charrettes, right? We don't need secret meetings. We can take it from here, and if we want to say 2 months, wrap it up, that will find my support. If we could do it in a month, that'd be great. Because again, Stephen's correct. We're going to make the final decisions. We've got a good starting point. So if Lumen's with us, then that sounds like a deal.
Yeah.
Jeff,
So, Commissioner, can I just wrap up some earlier comments real quick?
sure.
So Jeff, you asked this far southeast corner? Correct. So that had originally in the original plan been commercial or in the blue. And I'd say Scott said, hey, I don't really need that. I think we'd rather it be that.
That makes sense because we don't need that for.
We don't, right. We don't need that.
Chili's will pay top dollar.
Right. And also it makes a softer entrance into Navy Federal because, just to the east of this is where their main building is.
Well, actually, they've got a 100-acre strip that's going to have parking and fields, so they've already got a built-in buffer of what we sold them already.
Right. And so, and then also with regard to the school, the reason that when we had the meeting that we I don't want to say pushed, but questioned the residential in the northwest corner was because it would be surrounded by commerce. And that would be my same concern with a school in the far northwest corner is that it's then surrounded by commerce, potentially on two sides.
What I said was the apartments on the northeast portion, right next to Navy Federal, walking distance road. Remember, what we've been sold on is if we build this high-density 60-unit per acre apartments, people will live and work there. Well, if that's true, then why not put it right next to Navy Federal and let them rent and then walk over to Navy Federal in the northeast corner, Robert? And then the reason I talk about the northwest corner is if you build the school there and then we've got the walking trail, I've heard from the residents that live up there. Look, they're not happy that we're going to do anything, but they certainly don't want to look at an ugly warehouse building. I think having a school there provides a buffer. I think there are ways that we could do it and incorporate it to ameliorate the concerns of the residents that live along Frank Reeder Road. And again, if we're intelligent with the way we apply impact fees, we can improve Frank Reeder Road using funds generated organically without coming back to the well and using local option sales tax. So I think northwest corner is the school site, and I think northeast corner, if we got to build these gigantic Chicago-style, 60 per unit, 60 per acre, I don't support it. But if we got to do it, then that's the place to put it, and let them walk to Navy Federal.
So, and again, just talk to Scott, because I think.
I talk to Scott just about every day.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I think when we talked, he does want that northeast corner, because we don't want to blend so much residential and commerce and commercial, and we can do it. And I mean, just looking at the site real quick, I mean, that northeast corner, you're not really that much closer to the residential, I mean, to Navy Federal buildings, as where it is now.
Yeah, but,
And it connects to that mixed use, and then having the school just off of it, you know, people can walk to the school from there, people can walk to work from there. And my understanding, I don't want to speak to Scott, but is that to have more of a contiguous piece of commerce.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
With all due respect, I certainly understand what you both are saying. And y'all get the opportunity to talk to Scott individually, as we all do, but I think it would be beneficial for the whole that he's here, that we could have that conversation now.
Yeah,
I mean, because
hold on a second. And so we had this, and so that's why I thought that, and that was based on DPZ's recommendations as well. I mean, of course, they did have residential in that northwest corner, and so to be able to do that, that's probably going to be one of the last pieces to be developed. And that was the other thing, is that putting the school more in the central, and if we have to give them a few more acres, you know, I think it probably takes a little bit of that flex one. Maybe we rework it a little bit in talking with them, because we were thinking 15 acres, and they're saying they need 25. We can work through all that.
Well, where were they going to put the 60 units per acre? Right now, our code only goes up to 25 per acre. So, I mean, this was the most outlandish thing I ever saw in my life. Where were they planning on putting 60 units per acre? You watch these planning board meetings, people kill each other over going from 4 to 10. The residents already want my head on a stick. This isn't even my project, I inherited. Imagine when they hear that they want 60 units per acre, like a street corner in New York. Where are they going to put that, Robert? Where were they going to put that? In the middle of the park?
No, and I'm not, I mean, I don't need to get into the density right now.
Well, no, I'm going to get into the
I mean, I
density.
understand that, but that's, I mean, that's
Because
not.
my residents are in it, believe me.
I understand that. But, I mean, I think you have consensus on this board is that we don't want single-family detached on the site.
You know what's funny? Everyone keeps saying that. If I had to swallow hard and hold my nose and gag and pick any kind of residential at all for the site, it would have been nice, large, single family. And of course, that's not going to be the most remunerative for the board. It would have been, but it would have been the least impactful on the traffic, the schools, and everything else. But I mean, imagine a subdivision of 100 homes compared to 60 units per acre in high-rise apartments. What's more impactful? So yeah.
Mayor,
No, I don't want. We don't need to hear from you yet. We're having a conversation. Thank you, Marina. So I want to know, where are we going to put the 60 unit per acre stuff, Robert? Because that's an important part of the conversation that we need to have right now.
I haven't gotten specifically into the density of them. We've just done the use. And again, that's something we can work out as a board on what we want to set for that. I mean, I know what they're saying, but ultimately we get the say on how dense it's going to be.
And we haven't talked about the floor area
conceptual. I mean,
Okay.
this is conceptual is what we're talking. And so that's why I was saying that to put the school, I know that Kevin wanted it in that northwest corner because you can walk to some of the subdivisions can walk there.
Absolutely.
But based on the call that we had with DPZ, is that you're bifurcating the land some more.
Okay, well,
and
where would you put it? On the second block down? Point to where you think we ought to put it.
I would put it, so if we have to expand a little bit, it would be this western part of Flex 1, west of the main artery here.
Okay, but would we have an entrance onto Beulah Road then? I would think,
I would hope that we did.
Okay, so now we're talking. Okay, so you're talking about this block right here just above the pink.
Yes.
If we could put a dedicated entrance for the school, but then what would you have above that? That you would have commerce above that?
Yes.
Okay, and then the school to the south, what would adjoin that? A park or other
Well,
public
it's
amenities?
this pink,
Okay.
yeah,
Now we're talking. I think Kevin would accept that. I think I would accept that. I think that makes sense.
And Commissioner, I would, and that's where I would use some of your relationships and your time on the school board to say, look, you know, I'm going to work with you and get that. You need to work with one of those property owners to the west to get your access.
Well, I think
because that really becomes
contentious. It
yeah,
becomes very
I mean,
contentious.
They
Absolutely.
need another access. That's the other part of the school part. They need another access, and if they can get from that area to Beulah Road, there's 2 or 3 property owners to the west. Then that, I mean, you know, we're doing our part in that scenario, and put the onus on them to
And-
secure their own access to Beulah Road. That's,
Yeah.
I
And
think
in
that's
that
reasonable.
area, there are 2 properties that go from Beulah Road to our western boundary.
But the problem, we see this in Santa Rosa County, that the problem is if there are residentials lining the entrance, even though people love schools, they'll fight you, they will battle you. They battled Santa Rosa County when they needed a second entrance to one of their elementary schools. So I hear what you're saying, Stephen. I think that's a brilliant strategy, and of course, I'll talk to Kevin and Dr. Smith about that. But you know, and Robert, again, I'm not badgering you, man. I mean, we're just having a conversation here, but these are important matters that we've got to flesh out because people watch, and then at Walmart, they get this outlandish idea that we're building 60 units per acre because we're not saying we're not. I mean, you know, would you support 60 acres or 60 units per acre? Would anyone on this board support that? I don't see anyone. Yeah, I certainly don't. I don't see it fitting in at all out there. Again, the highest we go right now is 25. They want to go 60? It's just outlandish. But again, so we're making progress. The school there, okay, and so where would you say the highest, we're not talking specific density, but the highest density that you're thinking they would consider, where would it be? Right in the center here, this light beige? Is that what you're talking?
That would be part of it? Yes, that would probably be the highest density. I mean, that's where you're looking at well, actually, I would think that your highest density would be above your mixed use in the brown, because you're probably in some condos above retail, you know, 2 or 3 stories. The other ones are probably, as they say here, urban cottages, duplexes, and townhouses, so you don't have the vertical height as much as you do in the southern portion. So I'd say you're where you have the retail, that you have the, you know, people to support the businesses there. More of a downtown living type. I mean, like Southtown would be more in that area, and then
this
area is probably what we're seeing west of downtown with some again duplexes. Yeah. So I would say that the brown's more the downtown. I mean, I would look at it as the downtown area.
Okay. Well, I mean, guys, I mean, I think we're pretty close to something, but I agree with Stephen Barry. I think we need to wrap it up, and we need to take it from here. We've got the input. We've apparently arrived at a number of acres that we can all, so far as I can tell, support. And now we just got to put the pieces together and apply the land use and designation, and whether or not we can attach some form of impact fees or geographically specific concurrency or something, so that when we sell this off, the costs of all these other things is paid for by the person who's going to make a fortune developing it, right? So.
And then Jeff, just to talk to the residents of Beulah, I've gotten a couple of emails over the last few days and saying that we haven't listened to them.
I listen to them. I just don't always agree with them.
Right. And so I would say, you know, Stephen, as you talked about a couple of years ago, this was the commerce plan. The idea was that we were commerce out there, and I think the commerce plan that was presented by DPZ was probably what most people envisioned as being out there.
This is a compromise.
This is a compromise, and so I threw some numbers together real quick. So if you add the 110 acres that's in the green here, and then you add the mixed-use center, the public amenities and trails, and the residential of 61, that's 263 acres out of the 550 acres that we have roughly remaining, or 47% is going towards that. If you add the 100 acres that Navy Federal has, because it's going to be some open areas and things like that. So again, put in the 100 acres that you've given to Navy Federal. That's 363 acres of 650, which comes out to 55.8% of the whole lot is gone to Navy Federal for their buffer, has gone to mixed use center, public amenities and trails, and residential.
So over half, more than half.
So more than half.
Yeah. So again, I mean, that should be a victory for people. I mean, right? That's more than half of this property that was always going to be just to create jobs is now being set aside for use and the enjoyment of the community and the neighborhood. Yeah. That's right.
Commissioner May and then Commissioner Underhill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Jeff, I'm certainly ready to bring this to a landing because it's been, you know, long before we were elected, maybe 10 years ago, this has been talked about. But I often say, you know, if I'm a builder, you know, I have an idea of how to build a house, but really it's my architect and my designer that's really going to tell me how it looks. And so I think for me, that our position, we're a policy board. We're not land planners, land developers, architects, engineers. I agree with Commissioner Berry that we make the final decision. I'd be remiss if I didn't believe that after my service on this board, that someone else will sit in this seat and probably change something as presented. I mean, that's the nature of the elected position. So I do value the contributions of our economic development arm. I value the contributions of our consultants, and I reserve the authority to make a decision as it relates to policy. I'm not, the design, the marketability, those type of things, it's not my expertise, and nor am I gonna, switch into a lane that I don't have any real knowledge or scientific knowledge. I mean, I have some things in theory of what I'd like. I mean, I don't want a Chili's, I don't want any more Chili's in District 3. I mean, yeah, you can have Chili's. I mean, you can have all of them. Yeah, because I would be very upset with the Academic Development Arm if he said, oh, we put a Chili's and I developed 5 more dishwashers, Commissioner. Well, that'd be great. For me, the jobs that need to be created are what we talked about in the beginning. And, the premise for me, Jeff, a couple things. ROI for all of the citizens for the money that we've invested. I don't want to wait for someone else to sit in this seat to get paid back the money that citizens put in. And we need that money. You need it, I need it, whether it's for, right through my district, I want that money for sidewalks, I want that money for lights, and I want to return with at least some type of gain, if not a lot of gain. So that's number one. And number two was the opportunity to create jobs. And I'm one of those people that believe if you create a construction job and the guy learns and he's making $50,000, $60,000, and that project goes on for the next 10 to 15 years, that's a job. That's job creation. I've always been supportive of some type of light industrial, not smokestacks or anything that brings the neighborhood down, but something that improves the neighborhood. And so, Jeff, I don't think that I've been, at odds with anything that you or your predecessor has done. As you said, it's Commissioner Berry in your district, which are affected. One of the reasons that we sold 100 acres, for pennies on the dollar to Navy Federal, at a very, decent price. It wasn't the market rate. We could have gotten more from a developer at any day of the week, was anticipation that they would also help with this plan and improve the quality of life, increase more jobs. And so I want to see the smooth transition, if there is a transition. I think, every consultant job comes to an end at some point. But I think the benefit of us is not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, to make sure that work that's been done is utilized to the extent that it can be utilized, and to hold up commitments. With Navy Federal, when we talk about what we promised the citizens, one of those things was that, we weren't going to have to spend any of their money on the study of this plan. I probably would not have supported us spending $2 more million for a study without the commitment of Navy Federal, nor would I have said sell the property to Navy Federal at that rate if I believed that, this was not going to be a team effort. So with that, Jeff, I just hope that as we come toward the end, and I certainly get where you're going, Jeff. I can take things, personal. You can't talk about me and still be my friend. That's a challenge. But I also understand, in the global sense, that to build this project for future generations is very important for your children and my children, and if they want to come. And so I'm open to listening. I'm open to taking the ideas. If it's the hybrid plan, I'm kind of like Steve. I'm just ready to, to get off the stool. And let's do something. Let's sell something. Let's get some money. People, even the citizens, Jeff, they don't really believe all this. People don't believe it until you start turning dirt and building a building. What they believe is government studies, consult. So I want to get something
Can I ask you
done.
one question, Lumen, on this?
Yeah, you can ask me anything you like, Jeff.
Like I had mentioned before, though, I'd like to find a way to do it right this time. People always beat us up on infrastructure. You let them build it, but you didn't fund it. We've got an opportunity here perhaps to apply some measure of impact fee for folks. I'd like to know if I could earn your support if we do something reasonable to help pay for some of the infrastructure.
Yeah, and Jeff, I mean, no, I didn't close the door on that, and I'm sure, I don't want to do anything that stops our development friends from wanting to develop, but I do get,
They won't like it.
yeah, that you're going to have to
They'll
get,
still do it.
that you're going to have to get some type of impact fee. I respect that, Jeff, and I'm open to that. But we were led to believe by staff, by partners, that this was a good opportunity for Triumph, and I got to still believe that.
But we can have both.
I mean, so, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm with the impact, but where I would be disappointed, where this thing derails me, if there's not an opportunity for Triumph dollars, then we were consulted falsely, we were misled, misguided, and it would be sad if we, and our friends to the east got it. If we don't get in, I mean, because how can you do the infrastructure and some of the superstructure without some
Right.
help?
You can.
You-
So that's why you gotta have both.
Yeah, it would drain, we just went over our LOST, I mean, it's all our project. We wouldn't have any more LOST if we had to go in and put the infrastructure and outline it.
And because of the compromise, we're not gonna have the entire field. So even if we go get the Triumph, which I'm with you, let's go get it. But even if we do, we've still got a hell of a lot of other stuff that's gonna be built here that is gonna create an impact that the Triumph grant money may not necessarily help us with outside of the sewer. So that's why I think you gotta have both. You gotta have Triumph, and I'm with you 100%.
Okay, and then the private dollars
And the
too.
impact fees.
Well, when you come on the residential side, I mean, those developers are gonna, or are gonna have to help bear the cost too. That's right. I mean, people wanna live there, I mean, you say you don't want affordable housing, now, I'll take all, I mean,
There is no affordable housing at these costs.
right, so, I mean, I'd love for you to put some affordable housing and work with Meriden and get some HUD dollars, I bet we could get some HUD dollars if we had some control rents in there, that could help all citizens, so I'd be very supportive of that, but, you would get ran out of your neighborhood if we put affordable housing in there.
You never know, it's weird.
Well, I think it should be mixed use. If I had my way in reasonable compromise, it would be mixed use. I don't think you should ever concentrate all poor people in any neighborhood or take public dollars and create a expensive neighborhood. I mean, if we were gonna have housing, for me, if we had a multifamily, it would be a mixed use. It would be a little child whose mom may be a bus driver living next door to a principal.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's what it would be for me.
And you hit the nail on the head with that, Lumen. And remember, in District 1, this board, and I led the charge, we voted for that. It was one of the potential affordable housing programs from the state. We weren't selected, but it was exactly that model. It was like the pyramid, where you had some folks at the top that made good money, and then you also had some folks and it was a striated cross-section of a lot of different people. Like you said, it wasn't the model of putting all the poor people together in one, and I supported it. It was off of Highway 98. It would have been a great project.
I remember you
Unfortunately,
did.
it wasn't funded.
I mean, how do we want our community to not look today, Jeff, with this project, but how do we want our community to look 10 and 20 years down the road? And I think.
Gotta get this right.
Exactly, and that's where I think that's why that's the value of consultants in the
They got
vision.
us here. They got us here, and now let's rock and roll. Let's do it.
And so, and Jeff, final thing, I mean, because I don't want to labor the issue, because we've talked about this long enough, I just would recognize that, in my district, 5 feet from a dump, we paid almost $4 million from a piece of property from the school board.
Yeah, Walmart was only gonna pay 2. I don't know
Right, yeah, and we paid $4 million to the school district, so I'm not interested in what I probably will not support is a donation of a piece of property to an entity, when they're right down the road paying millions and millions of dollars to the private sector for land. And so,
negotiation that we had.
yeah, I mean, they charged us, they're paying a lot of money to private developers, and we're taking it off the tax roll, so that would be, it'd be a challenge for me, and as much as I love education, not even a challenge. I probably wouldn't support that. I mean, but I'm sure you would negotiate it.
Yeah, we'll work something out, and that's why the.
I mean, just fair is just fair.
Well-
I mean, there's reciprocity. I mean, we all inherit what our predecessors are doing, as people will inherit our decisions, as Commissioner Berry often says. And so I inherited probably a project that I could have had $4 million in the neighborhood of Wedgewood. That would have made a difference had we not, paid that land. And quite frankly, not you, but there's still people that was working there that negotiated that deal, which is somewhat
Just
unfortunate.
real quick, I'll just say, I haven't, we're allocating money in the plan, allocating land in the plan for the school board. I'm not giving it. I mean, we acquired this property and,
Yeah, there's going to be a cost
Yeah.
associated. Absolutely. That's a given.
Yep.
That's a
Okay.
given.
Commissioner Underhill?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Go back to my notes here. To Commissioner Bergash's points, I'm supportive of impact fees, offsite improvements, any of the tools that the government has to be able to shape the development in such a way that we mitigate the negatives while we build the positives. So, none of those things are off the table for me. And those are tools that a government can use to adjust the risk-reward matrix in order to get the things on the ground that are best for the community. To Commissioner Berry's points, I mean, I'll always be supportive of anything that has to do with infrastructure up front. It's our core mission, in my opinion. So any discussions of stormwater, sewer, firehouses, constitutional officers' needs to include the sheriff's office and the tax collector, for the people of Beulah, that enables Beulah residents and greater Beulah to not have to come downtown to get their work done. All of those kind of things are always going to be wide open support items for me. I do have to say that we've had 25 years to get the buy-in of the people of Beulah, and I don't feel necessarily. Obviously, we haven't seen the final numbers from the project or the feedback, but I mean, there clearly isn't a very strong support. There are not a lot of people standing up and saying, build the hybrid plan now type thing. So. The two plans that did have the most public support were the village and market plans. In my opinion, those were hybrid plans. Those were compromises between the environmentalist option of preservation of the land and the asset and then the economic development option of the Commerce Park. Those two, the village and market plans, fell somewhere in the middle of those two things and seemed to me to be ideal compromises. Unfortunately, those compromises were taken off the table as soon as they were shown that that's where the people's support was. The hybrid plan did not garner the support that either of those plans did. And the people of Beulah were not at the table 25 years ago when this started. They weren't represented on the phone call that created the new compromise. So, I mean, the hybrid plan, if that is where this board lands, we should not fool ourselves that we will do that without the support of the citizens most impacted by it in that neighborhood. My support still remains on the village or market plans, and my support continues to be with engaging the citizens of Beulah about their fate, because I think we are definitely casting die on their fate. So, there's plenty of stuff there that we, as Commissioner Berry said, that I'm very adamant about the things that I say and what I agree on and don't agree on. There's a lot of things that we agree on, and that's nice to see. There are things that we probably won't ever agree on, and that's just the nature of five honest men, looking at things from five different angles. Thank you.
Commissioner May, Scott's available if you'd like to have any discussion or any questions.
No, I mean, I probably would have one question for Scott, for me. Scott, I mean, and I've heard, multiple times from our consultant, and I don't mind our consultants responding, if Jeff doesn't mind that. I've heard from our consultants that we do have shovel-ready sites that are ready to go. Are you aware of those sites? I mean, and that helps me in my position of how much do we need or do we have enough? I mean, where are we on that? Because we'll hear multiple stories. We don't have any shovel-ready sites, then maybe we do have a shovel-ready site. What's your thoughts?
Sure. Again, and Commissioners, appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you today. Again, you go back to the definition of a shovel-ready site as it relates to, outside private sector investment. Again, those are sites that are competitively priced with existing utility in place, within close proximity or adjacent to, all of the required infrastructure. And most importantly, currently available for sale. And so under that definition, we have a few pieces of property available. The vast majority of those that meet that definition are well less than probably 10 acres, and probably the majority of those are 5 acres and less that are available for this community. So if you look at what's out there for a 15-acre, 20-acre opportunity that wants to come, the answer is no. We do not have any currently available shovel-ready sites that meet that definition. Now, we have a lot of work in process, such as the Bluffs, such as such as Midtown Commerce Park, which is a Superfund site. So we have a lot that we're working on, but as far as, again, competitively priced, utilities in the ground ready to go, the answer is none, or if they are out there, they have a lot of other significant challenges. Utilities running through them, et cetera, topography that's very difficult to build on, those types of things, which that information I think I've shared with the commission in the past, each one of our publicly owned commerce parks and challenges or issues with each one of those.
And Scott, what would be, from the time the consultant hands it over with the design plan and you have site control, what is your projection of when jobs will be created on that site?
And again, it's a great question, but it's one that's very difficult to answer. One is determination from this board on the amount of acreage that's going to be provided or set aside for that type of use. Because again, a development plan and a marketing plan is going to be based on on the property being, master planned or laid out, based on all of those factors, where on the site it is, how long it's going to take the utilities to be put in place. A big part of that is the types of companies that collectively we decide we want to go after, and what the impact's going to be on either 9 Mile Road or the development plan for the new interchange. All of the things will go into that and the determination of how quickly or at what point in time in the future that property becomes, a job creation property. So again, a significant project that comes in that wants 100 acres, and they do exist out there, that wants to hire 1,000 people. That project may be enough to expedite the infrastructure development to move faster than a 5-acre site that comes in and wants to build a 20,000 square foot building. All of those things will go into that decision process and that master planning, working with the commission.
So in the recruitment of companies or businesses, bringing them here, does mixed use help you? I mean, is that an attraction? Is that one of those bonuses that you give a company? I'm not giving you an E-date, but your employees don't have to walk to work, don't have to drive to work, or they can get to Jeff's Chili for lunch. I mean, does that help? I'm sorry, Jeff.
No, you're all right.
I know I go to
Hey,
Chili's. I
hey,
mean,
man.
it's on a Mobile Highway. I mean, I go there all the time.
I'll eat there sometimes.
Yeah.
And when I give you my opinions, again, I'm giving it from two different perspectives.
Right, well, I want to hear from you, and I want to
Yeah.
hear from Maria.
Sure.
I mean,
And-
I'm here
and-
to just listen to both
Right,
of
and
you.
that's what I'm saying. So when I look at a piece of property, we're looking at it for Commerce Park use. And so when I look at this site, that's from my perspective. My belief or my assumption is with DPZ, when they look at it, they are urban planners, they're urban designers. They're looking at it from that perspective. And we're coming at it from two different perspectives when we look at developing a site. From my perspective, again, I would have everything other than the dark brown, I would have gray. Again, that's my perspective. And then I would begin to add back in things to that. Where does the school need to be? Where does residential need to be based on the buffering of what's around the site? I would just go at it differently from my perspective. They've obviously gone at it from a different perspective, and that's okay, it's just different. So to answer your question is, do the amenities, along the frontage in the brown, I think they have tremendous value to the project and that mixed use. Having restaurants, daycares, dry cleaners, medical, all of those types of things make perfect sense to make that area and this site more valuable to anybody that wants to go on it. Where we have a significant difference is the residential. But I'm coming at it from a totally different perspective than what they are. If you're going to overlay residential on the site, I don't know where it best fits right now. Because again, you need to take in Frank Rita Road, you need to take in future interchange development, you need to take in where might the school go. I don't know where on that site as we move forward, from my perspective, it would really go. But those are things that I would think that would evolve once you really determine, yes, that amenity is extremely important. It adds value to the site, either from an amenity perspective or from a cost perspective. You may build some residential on here just because it adds additional cost that comes in that helps you build the infrastructure. But again, I would come at it from a different perspective when I would recommend where I think it needs to go, or working with your engineering staff to do that. Again, it's not right or wrong, it's just a different perspective. So yes, I 100% think the map that we're looking at is a good compromise. But if you ask me strictly from a economic development commerce perspective, again, I wouldn't have any of the lighter tan area on there
Exactly.
at all until you really determined what its economic value or its buffering value potentially, but in the reference of setting up a commerce park, not setting up an urban design project.
Well, you know,
Just
Scott, and, you know, so, and I certainly appreciate what you're saying. I certainly agree. I mean, the quality of life, the urban design is what our consultants, I mean, that's what they're great at. I mean, I vote every year for Florida West to get money to create jobs. And so, for me, I want your perspective on how do I help you create jobs for citizens that I represent? That's the bottom line for me. How do I create those jobs? And then I will listen to the consultants of how we make it beautiful and walkable and lovely. And then we have to come to some compromise. That's the art of anything, you know. No one gets everything they want in a negotiation, because if you did, it'd be a dictatorship. So
That's right.
so I would just want your perspective on job creation, and I think their idea on, you know, a walkable, urban, cool community, and as my colleagues have eloquently said, we have to make a decision in a representative democracy.
Correct.
So if there's something to add of value to you that you need in terms of jobs, you know, I'm going to be supportive of jobs. I started, you know, this project supporting jobs. You know, I'm going to end it supporting jobs, but I'm going to be open-minded to quality of life.
Correct. And again, and I concur with that. My question is, I would think a lot of that could happen within the 50 acres that are currently up there. But again, I may be wrong depending on what direction that the community wants to go in with a site that's this large. So again, that's just the perspective we're
Scott,
coming from.
obviously, we're making sausage up here. It's going to be a compromise. This is a drop-dead question.
Correct.
You were involved in the meeting, I wasn't, with Louis Bear, PEDC, Navy Federal, Keith Hoskins, Commissioner Bender. It's being represented to me that 271 acres works for Florida West, and that's enough for you. Is it? Because if it's not, I'll keep fighting for more up here. I said 319. Does this work for you?
Again, in Robert, if I remember right, the conversation we had was in context of the other plans that were out there. And the short answer is yes. If the collective decision is we need X number of acres of these types of housing, then this plan is 100% much better than the two alternatives we were looking at. So the answer is yes, we will design and work around the property that's here. But again, if you ask me strictly from a Florida West Commerce Park perspective, other than the dark brown area, again, I would have it all gray, and then come back and add residential based on how best to support that perspective rather than the other way around.
But unfortunately, it's a compromise with 5 people,
Yeah,
lots
so again, if
So
you ask-
271, you can make that work.
Again, will we make that work? The answer is yes, 100%. But again, if you ask me, my preference would be to back that down to just the 50, 55 acres, less the pink for other public purposes.
Right, and that's where I was too, but again, in the spirit of compromise, because I'll tell you, there's some people in Beulah, lots of them, that have told me no housing. They agree with me, no housing. They don't want any housing. So again, I'm up here compromising. There's a lot of people that want no housing.
And
Then there's a lot of
Commissioner
people that want no commerce whatsoever. You're not going to please everyone all the time. We're trying to strike a balance here, but if I feel like 271 acres, Scott, you and Commissioner Bender were able to negotiate that. I think it was static at 80 or 90 acres. So that was a big win. And again, I can support it. I'd like more, like you. I'd like more. I just don't know that I get 5 or 3 votes for that. So if we live with 271 acres, you and your team can market that and make it work, is what I'm hearing.
Correct. Again, if you all again adopt this plan and concept, again, as we really start beginning to lay out stormwater ponds and exactly where the roads are going to go and all those things, maybe some of those light squares end up somewhere else. But the overall percentage of use, the answer is yes. I think it makes sense to or let me back up. I think it's something that we could definitely work with and have value to the community, if that's the wishes of the board.
Commissioner Bergosh, I would say and I realize what's on the screen. It says 271 acres. If hypothetically, Scott came to us and said, I've got a tenant on the hook, they need 350 acres, they're ready to sign a contract, then I feel relatively certain in that scenario, you'd have board support to move forward with that. I mean,
And Jeff, I agree with Steve.
And I appreciate that, guys, and that's awesome, and I love to hear that. But here's the issue with that. That kind of thing, takes time to develop. The minute we cut loose with these light beige in the middle, those get built in 8 months. They get built so quick, and so if something like that comes along, it better happen quick, because the minute we give this away, we will never put that bird back in the cage. These guys they're committed. They're relentless, they're driven, and they build stuff quick. Just go drive out to Beulah anytime, and you'll see it.
And that's why we have the phases.
Yeah.
It says.
Well, I hope we can phase in the residential very, very slowly, slowly.
Yeah, look at it. Residential, the first phase, less than 5 years. The next one, 3 years beyond that, and phase 3, 3 years beyond that
For the residential.
for the residential.
So the first stuff is the dark brown up front.
Yes.
We let that go.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
cool, I like that. That's good.
Yes. And that's why I had them put in this phase, so people knew what the phases were, and it wasn't just gonna be overnight, have 61 acres of residential in the process.
So you heard Stephen just say 350 acres were needed by Google, because they were gonna bring 3,000 people here and make a second headquarters, but they needed 350 acres. The light brown goes away, right? The light brown goes away fast.
in my opinion, yeah, that's,
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's just a case.
Goodbye.
But some of it's what you said. I mean, these things take so long, and what we have is a compromise, and the art of compromise will probably be something that continues for the next few years. But I don't think it's bad to have this in place just in case, in case that other shoe doesn't drop, in case that prospective tenant doesn't present themselves. And we have a plan for, for developing the property if that doesn't happen. And, just because by all accounts, even by the most optimistic accounts, those are, they're whales. I mean, like just say in my work, I mean, they're whales. There's only so many whales that can come in and put that kind of capital on the ground. And, I think it's prudent to make plans assuming that we don't get a whale, but if we get an opportunity like that within the next few years, in my opinion, I don't think we're going to be far enough along that we couldn't just remap what's here and say, look, we've got an opportunity for Google to come in and do this, or for Amazon to come in and do this. I mean, there's not 1,000 companies, but there are probably 100 that have that kind of capital expenditure budget that could come in, and there are things happening in our region in other areas, so it's not implausible, but I don't think it, I don't think it hurts to move forward with what we're doing, because again, like I said earlier, I mean, we're designating a lot of it, or a large part of it, as flex already, plus the inferred flexibility that we have as a board by maintaining so much control, so.
Yeah, Jeff, we control the timing, we control it all. To me, this is the lay of the land and a map. The lay of the land may change. There may be some obstacles or something that we see, and we change our route. Who knows? I mean, 10 years from now, there may be someone sitting, probably won't be any, you may still be here, but most of us probably won't, that if Scott didn't bring one commerce job, then you have to change it, and so, or if Scott says, I've landed, as long as I sit here, if he came tomorrow and said that I've landed, 1,000 jobs at 60K and I need 390 acres, here we go. But if it sits there as vacant land, non-avalon producing, and he comes back in 7 years and he still has an idea and a theory and a thought of job creation, well, let me just tell you what's real. Those houses are real, that residential's real, that retail's real. So you know what? I had an idea that I was gonna get these $60,000 jobs. We didn't get them. So, let's go.
So Scott, just going back to an earlier question though, you know, when you're looking for companies, I think what we had discussed previously is that there might be a tech company or something like that that wants to be closer to a mixed-use urban core that you would target or try to drive towards this southern, southeastern portion, whereas another type of business would probably maybe want the northeast corner. So going back to Commissioner May's question, you know, are there businesses or companies that want that? Then, I mean, again, this site being as big as it is, you have some flexibility to accommodate the needs of whatever type of business you're talking to.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, you look at the layout and the way it is right now. If you look at that bottom right, I guess, gray square, you know, again, you would want to have like companies next to each other. So, yeah, I would hope that when we really get down into the weeds of this thing and, you know, and possibly even within some of the brown, you know, your technology-based companies or office-type companies would want to fall into that mixed use, because again, and I've said it over and over again, the last thing I'd ever want to see happen is we design or put something out there that takes away from the value of Navy Federal Credit Union and their campus and the way it looks and the feel and those things. And that's extremely important to their long-term success and our success as a community. So you would want to blend and match those things appropriately on the property to give that, you know, to give that transition, that buffer or you know, or supporting industry that makes sense. Correct.
And based on what we were just talking about of if a company comes in and needs 350, I believe that was also the reason we were asking about that residential that was in that northwest corner and trying to keep the types of land use as contiguous as possible, so that you didn't have residential all of a sudden you need to expand or retract and then change it. So this way, people will have a better understanding of what's most likely to be next to them moving forward, and not some level of uncertainty. And that's why I was saying that I didn't think the school in that northwest corner would be a good spot, because ultimately the idea is that we have commerce up there, and then they're not in a residential area, and they're surrounded by commerce, and that's why I was looking somewhere else. But
Yeah.
Okay.
So, correct, Commissioner. I think once you go beyond concept and percentage of acreages, you know, and you really begin to look at it, you're 100% correct. Some of those light brown may shift up into some of the gray area. I guess, you know, our discussion there was at least at a minimum, it wouldn't be to replace, you know, and just add more residential or more pink. It would be, you know, you'd swap. So
Right.
I think that was more of the discussion we had.
Sure.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Marina, thank you so much for your patience. I think the big question for me, and I think for this board right now, would be what is the timeline for the zoning and getting everything prepared to move forward, working with Commissioner Bergosh and getting either the types of densities or the types of uses hashed out and memorialized, so that we do get what we see as the best thing for Beulah and for the site, knowing that we want to try to move as expeditiously as possible.
Well, you agree. Zoning, the regulatory framework, zoning part of it. The other part are the green infrastructure and environmental recommendations, the transportation recommendation, of course, the economic and fiscal implementation, so assistance in that respect. We had
You're
3 months.
cutting out a little bit, just to let you know. Yeah.
So my headset in. We had 3 months allocated to that phase. Hold on, sorry. Let's see if this is better. Can you see better?
That does seem better, but if we could get her back on the screen.
Phase three, which is the implementation phase, is composed of not just the regulatory framework. It also includes the green infrastructure and environmental recommendations to make this happen. It includes the transportation recommendation, the economic and fiscal implementation, and the zoning regulatory framework, as well as design guidelines, if you so choose to go in that direction.
Okay. So you said 3 months?
Correct.
Okay.
Can we compress that? Can we make it happen in 2 months?
I mean, we can try. I can talk to our team about it and see. I think we would like to be done with this project for your sake as fast as possible.
Thank you. Me too.
Okay. So, well, you know, Q2 of 2021 is, I think, where we could get this. Is that, okay.
Stephen, are you 2 months?
Quarter two, I mean, she said May. I mean, that is in the second quarter, but it's the first, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I can't, you know, candidly, I can't make anything happen. So, yeah, whatever they say they can do.
Marina, if
that's
you
good.
can stay on the timeline as the Bay Bridge being repaired, so that should be about Memorial Day.
Yeah, no.
We're just gonna bring everything together right at the same time.
That means
So,
we'll do them for a year.
we'll shoot for Memorial Day. Sorry, Commissioner Barry, to cut you off. Did you?
I mean, I can't do any of the work, so, yeah, if that's the best we can do, then, okay. But I would hope we could make sure that sticks and just, yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, that's what we're gonna shoot for. Marina, is that enough direction?
Yes, I'm going to talk to our team and see if they can all wrap it up by Memorial Day, and I'll let Terry know.
Okay,
We'll give you a new schedule.
great. Well, thank you. Board, any further discussion?
May I hopefully reassure Commissioner Burgos on one thing?
Oh, she
And
wants
that is, can I say something about the plan?
Sure.
I just don't want you to think that the 60 dwelling units an acre was suggested for the entire site. Far from it. It was really only in the retail center. So it's a very, very small portion of it. Just so that you know, we were in no way suggesting apartments be strewn across the entire site.
Okay. Marina, let me ask you, when you say retail, are you talking the dark brown squares? Because I certainly would never support it down there. Where are you talking about 60 units per acre on this
Yes,
map?
in what's called PHSMUI, in that area.
Yes, dark brown.
See, that's the frontage most valuable property on 9 Mile Road. Why would we ever, Stephen, I mean,
We're not suggesting it along a 9 Mile Road, Commissioner Burgos. We understand, I don't think many people would want to live on 9 Mile Road. Exactly. We understand that is specifically reserved for retail. Once one road in and 2 roads in is where we would imagine the retail over some of the multifamily over some of the retail.
and at 60 units per acre, I mean, that's just tremendous amount of density. We don't have anything like that anywhere else. We don't have it in our code. So, you know, you heard me in this call, I'm gonna advocate for impact fees or something to help support the infrastructure that massive density would create. Do you have any suggestions on that? Do you
Yeah, so
support
the-
impact fees?
Yeah, I mean, impact fees are used commonly in many different places. I don't know the legality of it in Escambia County, if you can do it on one side and not another, so we'll let your attorneys address that. But it's certainly how a lot of development is paid for. So we're completely open to it. So just 60 units, so here's the thing, the multifamily that you currently have in Escambia County is around 25 or 35 units an acre, I don't remember.
25.
But it has a lot of fields of parking that surround it. What we were trying to do with the 60 units an acre, when we were talking to John Fisher about it in particular, was to try get a more urban type, only in that area, nowhere else. So I think, I mean, we can work on it through the zoning and make some proposals and show you what that looks like. It's maximum 4 stories. Now, you may not want 4 stories there, and if you want to tell us you want to restrict it to 3 stories, then we'll restrict it to 3 stories and it'll come on down. But so that you know, 4 stories will get you 60 units an acre. It's not anything taller.
And I think part of that also is you know, I mean, that creates more tax revenue, having that in there. And I mean, that's, I mean, part of the team is getting that as much tax as you can out of a piece of property.
That's part of it, but there's also...
That's part of it, you know, so, anyway. Okay, anything else from the board? Okay, Marina, thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Maureen.
Thank you, we appreciate
Okay.
the direction.
Thank you.
All right, board item 3 is the towing ordinance fee discussion.
Yeah, and this issue, as you remember, did generate some months ago. Kia and the legal team did a lot of work on this, and just for your consideration, we provided a chart in the back for you all to have some reference point in terms of fees. I do want to make sure that I iterate that the folks that have spoken to you before have been very clear that their costs have increased exponentially due to insurance and also equipment costs. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear that the CPI adjusted rates that I provided did not take those into those costs that they have into consideration, because I don't personally know those costs.
Okay.
Madam Administrator, I'm going to fully support moving these rates up to the modern standard that our other neighboring counties. So as I look at the draft and the strike-through, I like the new numbers, and I think it's fair to that group. We've heard about the costs that they're incurring, their insurance costs, the cost of their equipment, and I just think it's completely reasonable. I like the idea of going to the higher costs now, or the higher fees, and adding the CPI to it going forward, so that every 5 or 10 years, we don't have to come back and do it. It just becomes something that's cumulative. So for my part, that's where I'm at, Mr. Chairman.
Jeff, which column?
I'm looking at the draft agreement, but yeah,
It's the last page.
yeah, no, but I've looked at that, but I was looking at the draft agreement where we're going from, but yeah,
I think it's column C if you're looking at the chart.
yeah, that's what I was looking at earlier online, yeah. Whatever the, hang on,
It's the very last page.
the last page. Oh, here we go, it gets on the other side. Yeah,
And go one way.
yeah.
That's where we're starting.
I want the,
So is column C what's incorporated in the draft agreement?
I was looking at column C, yeah, that's what I was looking at, the higher number. Column C, and then add that, the CPI, because that's what's in the draft agreement, which I was reading.
Was it C or D that's in the draft?
No, C. C is what, for instance, the trespass tow, if you go, you look at this chart and then you go back to the agreement.
So C is the vendor suggested rates?
Trespass, exactly. Trespass tow currently 100, going to be 150. So yeah, I support column C. I support column C, and then,
Pull that up on the screen, so other people.
so the trespass tow would be 150, the non-consensual tow would be 150. This is all in the draft agreement, page 2 and 3 of the draft agreement. But it's also column C of I guess, this,
Let me see.
Jeff,
Laura,
I
can
concur
you
with
pull
you. I
up-
support column C.
yeah, thank you.
Laura,
Thank
can you pull up
Commissioner Drew.
page 43 of the backup? Just, I do have a question if someone from the towing could answer. So in the additional charges related to non-consensual towing, deployed airbags, it says there's a $2,000 fee that it doesn't look like the other counties have. We didn't find, it doesn't really state in here, give a good description of it, so I was just curious what that was.
Those airbags that you're referring to, those airbags are actually for heavy-duty recovery, for rolling
Okay.
over big semis and stuff like that. They actually go underneath the air of the vehicle, and they're inflated, and helps to roll the vehicle over with the help of the tow truck. So it's not.
That kind of
It's-
airbag,
it's a
okay, we
piece of
thought,
a-
we were thinking.
It's a piece of equipment that, that is very expensive to maintain and very expensive to replace. So,
And that would just be for commercial of 18-wheeler or something like that.
sir, I do that every day. I got to go get one for Florida Highway Patrol this evening.
No, what I was saying is mostly commercial vehicles, that's what I was asking, or is it for?
Commercial, yes. Oh, no, and no. We do a lot of RVs, a lot of home, motor
Yeah, but
homes
big
and stuff
vehicles.
like
I'm not
that,
saying
motor
like-
coaches.
Right.
Not
that type
cars,
of
though,
thing.
not sedans.
But not little small cars, though.
Not little small cars, though. We won't be using airbags on small cars, no, sir.
Right, that was, yeah, well, thank you.
I think that was, and I'm sorry, can you just state your name for the record?
My name is Mike Hobbs.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm with Matchett Towing and Recovery.
Thank you so much for the description, I appreciate it.
Jeff, was that a motion?
Yeah, I mean, did we want to do a straw vote? Because I think C is the way to go.
So, Commissioner Bergosh, and I've expressed support for updating these fees. we do have, we do have this grid that's got, I'm not as concerned with CPI adjusted rates, but Santa Rosa County, those rates were done relatively recently. Is it, I believe, that's halfway a question.
2015.
2015.
Oh, that long ago? Okay. I thought theirs was much more recent than ours. Yeah, but.
Ours
not-
half
I mean,
the time.
Yeah, it's still 5 or 6 years ago, though. I mean, it's still quite a while. Jeff, the only column that I really have an issue with, looking at the storage rate, I don't know when Bay County's was done, but it's a considerable increase. What would you, and I think that's something that does impact citizens, pretty frequently. And I realize what the vendor suggested rate is, we've encompassed a draft that includes the vendor suggested rates.
Sure.
Which is not, not often the way that we do business, to basically make the draft be what's requested just by, by the requester. But, and reasonably okay with going along with everything else. I do think that if we maybe reduce that $10 or $15 a day, that wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, I could live with that. I would say that I remember when these folks came last time and they talked about folks just leaving the cars there, so they rack up these costs. And not only that, they have to make themselves available to open up the storage facility to let the highway patrol or whoever is conducting the accidents, and they really take a hit. And then if there's any sort of spills from the fluids, then they have to clean that up, pay for that. So, I mean, I think they justified the cost for 50, but if you want to knock 10 off and make it 40, it would still be 100% increase from where they are now, and I think that would be, reasonable. I mean, was that the only one that you really had an issue with?
Yeah, I mean, everything else is, we may be more than, this would be higher than Santa Rosa County, but if it has been 5 years, I thought it had only been a couple of years, but if it's been 5 years for Santa Rosa County, then there stands some reasonable nature to that. And I understand that there is an aspect of what you're saying about access to the properties and stuff, but, unless it's a weekend or something, somebody's there already. And once the vehicle or the property is on site, there's not a tremendous amount of expense that's then occurred once it's there. It becomes somewhat of a static operation that just accrues fines or accrues expenses. So, just backing that off a little bit. Other than that, yeah, I'm good with the rest of it.
Commissioner Berry, can I ask you a question on that?
Sure.
That's on, let's see, row 8 is for Class A vehicles, your average car. The same figure comes in for row 15 at $50, and then for Class B, and then Class C, a much larger vehicle, at $60. Were you thinking like a 40, 45, 50, or 40, 50, 60?
And then again, it goes
Yeah.
up again with Class D, so each one is
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, I was just trying not to be ad nauseum on that. I certainly agree with what you said with regard to cars, your Class A vehicles. And it seems to me, though, that it should be graduated upward for the size of the vehicle.
Well, so Santa Rosa County, again, for what it's worth, I mean, there's a lot, there's a lot that we do that's, where we see them as our peers. They allow a pretty graduated increase from A to B, or especially from A to C. So if we took the A down to 40, and then if we left the others the way they are, that's okay.
I support that.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
The Class A ones, really, that's the average citizen. That's the one that I'm most concerned about. The other ones, you're getting into commercial or folks that have the resources. I mean, if you've got an RV and, those kind of things, RVs, boats, stuff like that. So 40, 50, 60 seems appropriate to me.
Yeah, and the Class A vehicle is where you see the 60% increase from Santa Rosa County, rather than, you've got a 60%, if we adopted it exactly as is, you've got a 60% increase on the Class A over or 60% higher over Santa Rosa County, or 65%. And then, only 25% on the B, only 20% on the C. So that's really the only one where I saw the big spread. And yeah, taking that to 40, I think that's okay.
And just for public's knowledge, it seems like a Tahoe would be in that 7,500 pound range, so that we expect that this would
So that Class A would be like a
encompass
Tahoe.
all of the personal use vehicles? I mean, is that typically about right? Those are all the Class As. You don't have to have a special driver's license for that. So, again, we think that this would encompass all the personal vehicles in that Class A.
And
Mr. Chairman, I'm not that concerned because most of these will be covered by insurance companies
yeah,
as well,
and then
so.
my only, oh, I'm sorry, yes, sir.
No, go ahead, Madam Administrator.
My only other question would be, so then you would like us hopefully to have them add the language to do CPI adjustment annually? Or,
Yes.
okay,
After we set the base, and then
Yes.
we never have to come back to it again.
yeah, because we would treat it like we do MSBU's and OMB. We will probably, I'll have them be the ones to, and then they would just get a rate sheet at the beginning of each year. Okay.
Thank you.
And it's maximum rate. Yeah.
So we'll bring that back on the 25th for finalization on a vote, because it's a resolution. We don't have to
And-
deal with it like an ordinance.
And I'll just ask I mean, we have a couple, I mean, is that, you guys good with all that? Okay,
So
All
to,
right.
so to
Yeah, I
clarify.
think they'd be good with that.
yeah.
So to clarify that what Madam Administrator and the attorney are bringing back to us is going to be basically column C with the adjustment of row 8, storage rate for Class A vehicles adjusted from 50 as presented here to 40, and everything else to remain the same.
Yep.
Everybody's-
The CPI
And then
annual.
CPI, then they can control it, and then they won't have to come back.
That's how you do that.
Okay,
Thank you, Jeff. Good job.
anything else for the good of the whole? We're adjourned.